Find out what's the general state of our country. What's the current situation? What must we do? Find out on The State of Affairs with Trevor Lindsay.
Thank you for joining us and welcome back. Just before the break, we spoke about the Court Street area. We called it back of town.
Yeah.
They call it now East Hamilton.
Yeah.
I've noticed a whole change of the demographics in the Court Street area. Those that are living in the area, Filipinos, individuals from Dominican Republic, Sri Lankans. Is our demographic changing in Bermuda? Sir John?
Well, I mean, the demographic is changing, no question about it. If our birth rate is falling the way it is, and we need manpower, resources, we have to find out where we can get them from. And we've been, one time we got a lot of people from the Azores, landscapers and workers and so forth. But Azores I was visiting Azores. I visited twice recently, and the last time I was during August. And I noticed that they really have come up a long way, and people, Bermudians, Azorians, now are going back home to live and try to sort of live a comfortable life and get out of some of this conflict that's happened. We're now having a Filipino, and thank God, that because they're wonderful people, don't get in trouble. Their population is quite large in Bermuda, and I think that eventually they'll be the third largest grouping. Maybe one of these days be the second largest grouping as our birth rate falls. But you have Indians and Sri Lankans and people from all parts of Asia coming. But even they are finding now the cost of living here and so forth, and and being able to, and because they can't bring their families, they have to send the money home, and that's another part of our economy that's done a number on us. We have all these people come from these third world countries.
A lot of money's leaving.
Well, and on top of that, they're here and they do jobs, and they live as meagerly as possible because they got to support a family home because they can't bring their family here, and they want to retire at the age of around 50 or so, and go back home. So they try to build a house or two in their countries. Their dollar, Bermuda dollar, goes a long way in their country, and that's the whole sort of mismatch that happens. So a person comes from Philippines. They do a nice job, and they work hard. I give them credit. Or they come from India, and they do it. They get paid the same wage a Bermudian gets paid. When they send that dollar home, though, it's like worth probably 10, 15, 20 times more. So which means the fact that they can build a house, educate their children, save money, and build maybe another house. The Bermudian, on the other hand, living here with inflation, got a family, can't make ends meet, and have effect and have to leave the country. There's a mismatch of human involvement that one can do well. So the expat can come here and do well. He can come here and get jobs working for the international companies, working for local companies, and do well. The Bermudian, on the other hand, is stuck here with family and having to try to meet costs and so forth, and then retire here, whereas the person going back to a third world country can retire and be comfortable. The only place that Bermudian can retire is in England, but he better get there early enough that he can get himself established, or she can get herself established. I think, we need to sort of try to figure out how we're going to really retool Bermuda. And I think Bermuda needs an overall plan. We don't have an overall plan of Bermuda. When I try to get that thought going some years ago, maybe 10 years ago, working with Sherlinberg and a few others, I try to look at from Somerset, Dockyard, all the way down to St. George's. And we should have a plan that says, we're going to do these things. And I even had a plan by which, and I gave it to government, that said, when we grow our economy, we should grow our economy, and there should be a trust that every Bermudian has a share in. But those people at the lower end would get the benefits the most and at the upper end because they're already earning money, so it would be a cost of living adjustment process. So the people who can find jobs or can for various reasons, and because demographics and birth don't produce everybody that's a genius. Or doesn't, or they can find their way in their field of interest as readily as some others, because some others have parents that guide them, or whatever case might be, have means that guide them, or else they have a different sort of they want to be an artist, or they want to be a musician, or they want to be whatever they want to be, and it doesn't give them the type of income. And you can't force somebody to be something that they don't have a innate interest in being that something. So what we've done is the trust would do that. And I've laid out from Somerset to St. George's a plan, and then come up with a trust, and even gave the government a plan, the premier the plan, that if we wanted to put a casino in Hamilton, where the old court place is on Front Street, on Court Street, on the corner there, and do it electronically so that every Bermudian would own it, that trust would own it, and it would be done electronically so you wouldn't have to have the banking arranged. It'd be credit card swipe system. So behind the scenes, I've done a fair amount of work in doing these things. But quite frank with you, I might as well not have done them because I spent money doing them. I had to pay Lindbergh and Simmons for it and everything else. I got a acknowledgement that they've received it. I haven't heard from them since.
Well,
That's the way it is.
let me just state that I have nothing against our guest workers that are here in Bermuda. I only use this demographics for an example. Sojourn, we see, you spoke about, and I see a lot of derelict buildings, houses, derelict buildings, families that are fighting over properties.
Yeah.
And by the time they do sell them, that's where the PRCs are getting these properties. And it seems that there's no, well, you said it earlier, banks are
getting some very nice properties because some of the people who are doctors and some who are lawyers who can't afford to keep them up, or the children who inherited, one family who's got 2 or 3 children, and when they die, the kids have to sell the property because each one of them wants a separate of it. And who buys them? As recently, anyhow, it's been these people getting their PRCs and getting their, what they call it, job creation PRC.
How do we fix that?
Well, we fix it by
how do we give the advantage back to the Bermudian?
by first of all, we got to take and pay our debt, pay down something on. You can promise Bermudian everything you want and tell them you can do everything for him. The banks aren't loaning Bermudians very much money. The PRC people have saved up their money. They're earning good money working for these international companies. They don't have the type of expenses that Bermudians have, and therefore they're able to take and buy these Bermudian properties. And I suspect that about 70-80% of these properties being sold now are being bought in that fashion. Because from what I understand is that the banks have a very clear policy now, is the fact that you have to earn enough money that you can satisfy, that you reach your cost of living. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, you have to have some cash. On top of that, then you have to be able to service the mortgage, which makes it virtually impossible for people to borrow. So Bermudians really aren't able to borrow money, except for unless they inherited something that's big enough that they can sell it and buy something. And what they end up doing is buying apartments. And since apartments are scarce, they end up really, in a sense, holding on to their cash until it dissipates. Because if the cost of living index is running at 6%, and I suspect Bermuda's probably about 7%, 8%. Not this idea of it's 2 or 3%. It's the biggest con game there is. Look, and so the end result is your money is diminishing if you hold on to cash for 10 years. And it's diminishing at 6%.
Did we make a big mistake giving away our 3 banks? Or selling?
We didn't give away anything. The banks were practically bankrupt, and they had to sell them. Okay. The Bank of Bermuda couldn't meet the capital requirements that these international businesses wanted to take and come to Bermuda and put deposits in the local businesses, and they had to sell in order to survive.
Okay.
Bank of Butterfield went through the same process and really went through a wrenching period in that they're the two banks that count the most in Bermuda.
Clarion.
Clarion Bank, which was Provident Bank, which became
Gibbons.
well, you had Gibbons Bank,
Mhm.
and the same thing Gibbons Bank had. You know, it went through a rough patch and requiring more and more capital by the monetary authority to cover. I mean, there were regulations and compliance requirements. Today, if you're in business, the compliance requirements are like running a business by itself. I know I run my business,
Wow.
and I have one of my children, and all she does is spend time just damn compliance and licenses and compliance. And I don't know how any small business can survive, particularly if you're anywhere in the financial business. So how do you fix it? You fix it, first of all, by injecting plans in your economy. If you have a problem, and you say, I'm going to fix it just by sitting by and thinking about it, but I'm not going to do anything about it, the problem gets worse.
Yeah.
You got to have a master plan. You got to sit down and get the best brains that you can find, and come up with a master plan
Get some advice.
and get some advice that says that these are the things we can do. We're going to pass legislation. We're not going to say, oh yeah, you can do this, and if you think of something else, we can do this, and if you think of something else, we can do this. The world doesn't want an ad hoc, particularly if you've been in trouble and you go to your banker and you say, by the way, I'm doing this and doing that. The banker looks at you and says, well, what are you doing that's going to make it possible for me to loan you money? Oh, I haven't thought about that. That's our state we're in right now. And it's not, and it's a big job to do, to say to other people, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I need some help. And I want you to come in and help me to do it. And by the way, I'm going to commit myself that as long as it's reasonable, I'm going to do it. Because I know the fact that I don't know what the hell I'm doing. All my life, I've humbled myself to people. And if you ask me, what is it that made John Swan, both business-wise and even today, and politically wise, is when I humble myself to people and told them I needed help, really help. I got it. And the end result is, I can say I stand here today. You talked about the Bermuda success story. You can see my business. I'm not bragging. It's a well-organized business, but I can tell you, I constantly seek help. Then I seek help, humble myself, as you probably know or might not know. When I go abroad and go into some of these think tanks and people who really know what the hell they're doing, I listen to it. And I think it was Lord Mountbatten who taught me one thing: learn to listen and listen to learn. And then take what you have and give it in a meaningful way back as a result of your experience. We're not doing that. All we're doing is saying, you should like us because we are in charge, or we are the opposition, and in other words, they're taking their legal constitutional position and thinking that's the key to satisfying the people's needs. It's not. It is knowing what the people's needs are, seeking help to find a solution. And Bermuda can get out of this mess. I guarantee you, we got out of it back in 1982, from 82 to 90. By 90, we were booming, right? I see us coming out of this mess again, booming. But we're not going to get out of it by just keep doing the same thing. Like being on a Ferris go-round wheel. You're on the wheel, you go around, you say hello to somebody you saw, and you come back to that person again. Hey, how are you? Good to see you again. Back around again. Hey, good to see you again. That doesn't solve a damn problem. We've got to be saying, I see you, and I ask you to help me to stop this Ferris wheel. Let me get off and help me to go where I need to go to get on to the next entertainment facility, so I can have some variety in my experience, than to be stuck on the same Ferris wheel all the time. So, and Bermuda just needs to do it. You know, we just got to humble ourselves and ask for help. The British, they know how to help us. The Americans know how to help us. The Canadians know how to help us. And if we have to go to the Caribbean and ask for help, we do it. I'm not sure whether they have what we need for help at this particular time. And I think we send a message to the rest of the world. By the way, you're not that important. We'd like to be in CARICOM instead of trying to work with you and with NATO, with the European Commission, with the Americans, and even with their politics. There's opportunity, you know. We tend to sort of poo-hoo. Those people have given us what we had. That's what it boils down to. Caribbean didn't give it to us. It was Americans that gave it to us. American tourists, the bulk of them came from the United States.
Coast.
Britain gave us a standing that said this is a British territory. There's an appellant process to the Supreme Court. There is a tradition and customs of parliamentary democracy, which is supposed to be open and fair. You know, forget about what you like or don't like British people. It's the system that you liked. But what happened? We've bastardized the system, not by changing it, but by not utilizing it the way it can be utilized to our best interest.
One might say that the colonial system has not worked for people of color.
No. Colonialism could work for us. We haven't worked for ourselves.
Okay.
That's the difference. You know, it's easy to throw these phrases out, colonialism, and colonialism hasn't worked for. Colonialism is, what is it? It's a group of British Commonwealth countries that adopted, has the parliamentary Westminster system in it. But it's up to you to make use of it. It doesn't work for you because you don't make it work for you. It doesn't impose anything on you, you know. You impose things on yourself. So Pogo says, I found the enemy. The enemy is me. The day you look in the mirror, can you ask yourself, who's telling the greatest lies?
Wow.
Look in the mirror. Was that Michael Jackson?
Man in the mirror. Man in the mirror.
Yeah. And so we need to look in the mirror. And I think we all need to go home tonight and look in the mirror and say, number one, do I love Bermuda?
Yes, sir.
Am I committed to Bermuda? Am I committed to making things better for everybody? And you know something? When we do that and we humble ourselves, the foreigner who was giving us so much will give us a lot more.
Oh, wow.
He's got so much to give. They're in here making gobs of money, and we're here bitching and moaning with each other. You ever seen that? You know how it suffers? When you have a child at home or children at home, and the mother and father are clashing, guess who gets hurt the most?
Children.
Not the mother and father,
The children.
but the children.
Good stuff.
So the very same thing is happening to our citizens because we have created this image that I'm in charge and you should understand what I want to do. Goddamn well do it, because your people are leaving and leaving fast. They're jumping ship. And when people jump ship, they don't do it because they want to do it. They do it because the ship is sinking and they want to get the hell off, because the tide will pull them down in the process. You ever seen a sinking ship? It doesn't go down, but everything that's around it
pulls it
down with it.
Sure. Wow.
So I beg Bermudians and I beg our government to make sure the ship is buoyant, make sure it has a compass, make sure it knows direction it needs to go, and make sure that if you don't know where it's going, get some help so we can find out where we need to get to. We've done it before. You know, the Reagan administration, local people like Mike Murphy and Saul Frumkin and many others who were here, and the business community, which I had to whip into state, they didn't want me to negotiate the treaty until I told them, you will either be in this room and work with me, or else you're out, and don't come back in once you're out. When you're in, and when you're out, you're out. And eventually I got the banks and the insurance companies and the law firm, because they thought they still ran Bermuda. That was my first real challenge. to get them to, and then we mapped out a plan. And when they went for that treaty, we knew what we were going to go for. It was a plot of a plan. And then they began to respect the leadership of what was done. And even read the newspapers. They still were picking and moaning and groaning. But there was a plan. We don't have a plan.
On that note, so John, I want to thank you. It sounds that we have a lot of brilliant minds still in Bermuda to help us to overcome where we are today.
Seek help.
Ask for help.
Help.
We got tourism season starting next month.
Tourism not going to bring you the dollars you need. I don't care what you need.
But our roads.
But it's not just roads. You don't have the shops in Hamilton to buy anything.
A lot of empty places.
You don't have the transportation system breaks down in the summertime.
So with the cruise ships coming in, it's just sun, beach, and back on the cruise ship.
17% of our GDP, right? 17% of our GDP in tourism. The rest of it, almost international business. What does it tell you?
Wow.
You double your tourism, you're still not going to get
the money.
And if you double your tourism, you don't have sufficient transportation. You got god-awful roads. You don't have the hotel, so you can't even double your tourism. That's not the answer. We have in our DNA tourism, like the Tolbert brothers and Hubert Smith and everything else like that, and what Smiths and Trimmingham used to be. The world has moved on to Amazon. The world has moved on to, really now, a virtual world that you can go almost anywhere with and stay home. But if you go somewhere, and when the cruise industry is so successful, they bring people to Bermuda. They leave New York, they come to Bermuda, they game, and they on the boat and have entertainment. They arrive in Bermuda, they're still gaming and entertainment at night. And at daytime, they go out and they go to Horseshoe Bay. So a few of them hire some bicycles and get in these minivans in big numbers and pay very little. Tourism is not going to be if Southampton Princess is open.
It's another program.
It helps the international business that gives us bread and butter because it means more airlines will come from different destinations to Bermuda. But it does not help to solve the problems that we have. We've got to step beyond that and recognize. And this is where Cayman has done a great job. I mean, you know, we poo-hooed Cayman long enough until now they're poo-hooing us.
Wow.
You know, in other words, the shoes are not on the other foot now. I would not want to. I've been to Cayman. I would not want to live in Cayman. It's flat, it's boring, a lot of mosquitoes. And if the weather gets really bad, it can be really bad down there. You know, it's what water level. But the fact of the matter is, while we thought that we were going to hold on to Bermuda and guide Bermuda,
the hotel structure there.
And it's just Cayman had, it was very simple. Cayman had a bunch of fishermen and farmers or whatever the case might be, people, something like 14,000, 12,000 people by the time they got started. And they were all from Jamaica and from the Caribbean. They were all black. It wasn't an issue of race in Cayman. And so when the whites came with their ideas, and they had nothing, they were glad to embrace them. There was no, you know, you're taken from me, you kept me enslaved, you've done this and done that to me. So Cayman had a different genesis. And when you have a different genesis, your impetus is different. By the time they woke up and found out that they had lost their country, and almost by one man single-handedly pumping billions into a billion more into the country, Cayman basically said, well, it's happening now, and we're just going to let it happen. Race didn't get involved, and now they are a minority in the country, and the country's taken off. I would not want to live in Cayman or be a Caymanian. I want to be a Bermudian. But I want a Bermuda that suits Bermudians, but also accommodates the foreigner, who's our bread and butter. We are no longer bread and butter producers. 95% of U.S. dollars earned, that's dollars that comes from overseas into Bermuda, that services Bermuda are foreign-earned dollars. Companies that are here, whether they're law firms, accounting firms, telecommunications firms. Supermarkets are secondary. You go in a supermarket, you pay for it with Bermuda dollars, or you pay with U.S. dollars. So people are buying, work for a company, international company, go and buy in a supermarket. So supermarkets don't earn except for a few tourists that come here, buy goods from us. So we're not now, as we used to be, a big U.S. dollar earner. And so I worry that the local economy, that's why the banks, I think, don't want to admit it, seeing their deposits drop, because as the international, particularly with new insurance coming in and so forth, and with the small shrinking local population, and with the foreigner sending his money overseas to his home, the amount of U.S. dollar balance or trade balances has to shrink. And that's what worries me, because it means the fact that we've got less of a dollar pool than we pretend we've got. The thing that has saved us is HSBC, is not Bank of Bermuda is not Bank of Bermuda, it's HSBC, a big bank that happens to stand behind Bank of Bermuda. Bank of Butterfield, which is our next big bank, has Guernsey, and it has Guernsey and one other destination. It'll come back to me again. Cayman. They earn more money in Cayman and Guernsey than they earn in Bermuda.
Wow.
Yet we got all this big international business, because international business now doesn't have to do with, we don't have any foreign exchange. It now can deal with any bank it wants, and it deals with this bank in New York, so they get paid their money into their bank account. So we've got an upside-down economy, right? And what saved Cayman is it's growing and it's putting money into construction, and the construction and occupying space and getting payment for services and licenses. We are not putting money into construction. We haven't allowed it. We haven't defined it. And we're not a free market economy yet. And free market means you tell me I can do something by the government. Don't hang me up by a lot of red tape and treat me after that like, oh yeah, you can do it, but here are all the parameters, and the civil servants can stop you, even though the government said you can do it, and a whole lot of red tape. And the end result is people say, I can't be bothered. I mean, they promise me something. They tell me I can do something. I'm prepared to put my money into it. But God, what I've got to go through. And I have people coming to me from Tucker's Point to Tuckerstown to Hamilton saying, I got a commitment, but it's not worth anything, because the civil servants say one thing and the government says something else. Who the hell's running the country? If I run my business, I give my manager a responsibility. If he can't do it, I have to get another manager. I can't run my business and expect it to perform in a certain way. And all it does, it ends up being a mismatch. John Swan said one thing, and my manager said something else. Who do I trust? And so people lose trust, and foreigners and Bermudians have lost trust because of this mismatch that's taken place. We got to stop all this hocus pocus stuff that's going on and just be honest and straightforward. We're in trouble, folks. We all got to work together. We've got to sort of find a platform by which we work to solve this problem. If you got some ideas, don't ask me for my ideas and then turn around and completely ignore me. I mean, I saw Balco the other day in trouble. It won't be in trouble. Now they tell me they dug the water up and they said water's okay to drink, but I know it's a big bloody lie. I also know the fact that if you keep over there and get that soot into your system, it could theoretically change your DNA because it's chemical. And so when you get in your DNA and you pass it on, then you go out and marry somebody, you don't know who you're taking that down St. George's and marrying somebody down St. George's and produce a baby. You don't know what effect that has on that child. This thing is more serious than you think it is.
Whoa.
So we need to find a solution. And I said to him, Larry Birch and I fought against putting in hydrocarbon, high level of carbon oil in Belco. They wouldn't listen to us. In fact, we fought against them selling Belco because we thought that should be one thing Bermuda needs and needs the power. Somebody convinced the powers that be. And one guy came to me, and I'll forget, he came to me.
Somebody had convinced this administration.
Yeah.
Let's call it what it is.
Convinced me, tried to come to me, convince me to drop my opposition. And he told me why. He says, I stand to make $30 million. I'm here as advisor to Belco and Gemco putting a deal together. He says, and you're trying to mess it up for me. I asked him, please leave my office and never come back in this office again. So we went to the authority. We made our case to the authority. We went to the public, made our case, and we were completely ignored. And we said, this is the worst deal for Bermuda. The company didn't have a lot of debt. The company could borrow money to take and do what it needs to do and continue to serve Bermuda. The company needs to get out of oil. I subsequently went back to Belco and said, here's the proposition. You can continue to whether the water there is pure or not, putting that soot in the air and trying to buy up the properties, keep people quiet. It's a human issue that needs to be resolved. The way to do it is very simple. Government owns property at Morgan's Point. Put a small LNG plant there with this fuel supply, and then take the LNG plant that's at Belco and put it down in St. George's. So when a ship comes in and put LNG, they can do St. George's, and they can do that, and you tie your line back. You want so that, and by the way, get Bermudians to fund the supply itself on those two LNG plants, or issue bonds for them. And the end result would be you could take out the plant, and both plants in Pembroke. Pembroke becomes the distribution administration. You solve a whole lot of problems that way. And I haven't heard anything in the last 6 months about that. All of a sudden, it's going there. We're going to solve the problem because it's not so bad, and we're going to try to make it a little better by maybe putting some. It doesn't go away. So what's happening is people got to the stage where I figured I can't offer any help. Why should I continue to rack my brains when nobody is prepared to listen? And if they listen, it's a momentary until they meet the next subject up the street. And the end result is everything dies in the process. And all we've had in Bermuda really is a slow death of our infrastructure.
Sounds like we got room for another discussion. So, John, we're going to end it right there. But we are going to come back just after the budget and hear from Sir John.
Look forward to talking to you, Trevor. You are, as I said to the very beginning of the show, you can be provocative. You can ask questions. I can only give you what I see and how I feel and the knowledge I try to acquire both locally and internationally. And I will always look out for the best interest of Bermuda. I'm not always right. I can be wrong. But at least I'm not going to be afraid to express my views.
Good stuff. I appreciate your input. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for our next program just after the budget. This is State of Affairs. I'm Trevor Lindsay. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for watching The State of Affairs with Trevor Lindsay. See you next time.